ABSL Summit. Beyond Tomorrow. Building a Sustainable Future.
So I'd like to invite to the stage the panelists. Dariusz Kubacki, Vice President and Managing Director, KMD. Grzegorz Nowaczyk, Head of Threat Intelligence, GSK. And Markku, Rossi, Managing Director, Goldman Sachs. Thank you, gentlemen. And hopefully we will try to be digital, so I hope we will also have Paula Januszkiewicz online. Or we will not. We will see. Paula is the founder and CEO of CQURE. Yeah, she's there. Hello, Paula. Hope you can hear us. I'm sure there. Yes, you can hear us. Great. So first of all, how do you follow a fire debate? I don't know. We'll see how we manage. I've noted down a couple points from the day today. And some of them were 5 billion users in the cloud already and growing, and Poland will be the hub of cloud. Innovation is key, and technology is the driver of innovation. Digital transformation is here, acceleration of digitalization is happening right after COVID. And data is gold. So all of these things are true. All of these things are very interesting, but I also, with preparing for the panel, I also looked at some other information, and some of the things that I found are hacker attacks every 39 seconds. I'm pretty sure that's much more often, at least my personal experience with my email. 1 in 3 Americans per year is impacted by hacking attacks. Publicly traded companies average costs $160 million of hacking or cyber attacks, and I'm sure that's an understatement. That's an average. Since COVID, FBI reported a 300% increase in attacks. And last one is a number that personally I can't understand. It's approximately $6 trillion is expected to be spent on cybersecurity this year. So if I put these two things together, on one hand I see there's a great opportunity that technology brings us, but there's a great threat, I think, that is behind this as well. So, and I think to follow a fire debate is probably it's good to follow with the most important subject, in my opinion, in technology right now, which is cybersecurity. So thank you very much for joining and for the listeners to be here. So I'd like to start maybe with the first question and try to maybe demystify cybersecurity a bit, which is, and maybe I'll direct this question to Paula. Hopefully you can nod, Paula, if you can hear us. Great.
Yes,
so
I do.
What is, when I think cybersecurity, or when we think attacks, we think hackers in hoodies, in groups trying to steal our data, or trying to steal data from companies. And then companies trying to react to this. Not sure, I'm personally not sure how. So Paula, can you let us know what are the most common threats that we as users, I think it's important also to think of us as users, and companies see, and what are the typical examples of things that they do to counter-react?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the good question. Whenever we are looking, for example, about some impactful hacking statistics that were there within the 2020, we are able to observe that 17% of breaches, and that's according to Verizon, involved some kind of form of malware. But at the same time, during the pandemic, we could observe the significant change in the way of how malware has been written. And prior to pandemic, we were able to see approximately 20% of new stuff coming to the market. During the pandemic, we observed around 35%. So what the companies are dealing with is the code that is written in some kind of a way that sometimes it's discovered, of course, sometimes it's not, but that's definitely the code that has to execute somehow. So see ransomware. And also when we look at some other reports, we're able to see that in most of the cases, phishing is the #1 mean of transportation for the attack and also for malware. And that is basically what we were able to observe in, for example, Irish healthcare, where there was a user that clicked on the link and that their data has been encrypted. They had to pay the ransom in approximately $20 million. We were able also to observe the code being executed in a case of Colonial Pipeline. So there was a simple configuration of the user password and so on, and then eventually someone managed to get in, and then that was a case of a human-controlled ransomware. So again, we're speaking about the code. So the two major threats that we are observing, it's of course ransomware and phishing, but what is the case is that 86% of attacks, they were also financially motivated. So if we are supposed to name cybercrime nowadays, I would just simply name it a very lucrative business. Because on average, the successful ransomware campaign brings us approximately $90,000 monthly of a revenue if we, of course, manage to run the campaign effectively. So it's quite a lot of money for someone monthly just sending in emails and counting that someone's going to click on a link.
Thank you. So that's the attacks. What do companies do? What do you gentlemen do? How do your teams protect us?
I think it's important to remember that cybersecurity, it is not only technology. Technology is just 1/3. The other two things, it is people who we have, and it is also processes which we have. And we need to look into all these things constantly together. And if you look into company, then I think statistics also say that 30% of the attacks somehow involve our employees, 30%. And if you ask employees, then less than 1% is aware that I can be contributor to the attack. Means that we have a lot of to do also when it comes to our employees and the way how we handle data. In one of the previous panels, it was that was quite good thing said by Magda from Google, saying that the companies do not own the data, we only administer. And it's quite difficult to find a company currently which do not administer the data of the customers, users, or the other parties. It's like a bank, and that's quite a good analogy. If we send our money to the bank, then we simply assume some level of security, trust, and simply cannot imagine that our money will be transferred somewhere or will be used for the purpose which we do not understand. The same is exactly with the data, and we should treat ourselves, each company, like being a bank, and having quite important asset of our customers, employees, whoever else, which is like money, and it is actually the data, and the protection of this data is becoming core business for each of us.
I actually had these kind of questions thought about this towards the end once we've covered the business, but Tarek, if you talked about it, I think let's maybe take a stab at it right now. I also looked at data that 90% of all the hacking attacks are due to, or successful hacking attacks are due to human failure, so it's not technology. So how should we educate all here, our staff, our people, in order not to be a potential threat to the company? Markku?
So if I may disagree, or totally actually agree, the people and the humans are really the critical factor, and the sort of the old saying has been that we need to train the users, and we have the online training and all the phishing attempts and things like that. But I'm sort of like thinking that like if I have to distinguish an invalid link from a valid link, on bogus sort of like malware attachment from the real one. If I need to do it, why can't the email system do it for me? And I would sort of challenge the security industry that they should protect the customers more and raise the level. And it's hard, but really like delegating all the responsibility for the end users is also sort of like playing it cheap, in my opinion.
Oh, that's an interesting statement. Grzegorz, anything to add on users and technology, that linkage?
Yeah, I can add a lot to that. So if you look at the autonomy of attack, at the really beginning of each attack is simply a user, people, us. And that education is a key, and it's not just, don't expect your company is going to educate you how to deal with emails or phishing or any kind of like that. Do that for your personal data as well. So what we are seeing across GSK is that this attack often happens attacking individuals, not as GSK or our employees, but more as your individuals. We leave tons of data online that allows attackers to use the data against us, against our company. Simple example, LinkedIn. We post lots of data on LinkedIn, projects, connections, who we worked with, technology we've been using in our organization. If you collect all that information, do that reconnaissance, it allows me to write an email to you, saying, hey, I've been working with that person, and this is the Excel spreadsheet that I'm sending to you. Can you just confirm that data? Or can you participate in that project? Once that individual, and there is no technology on earth that is going to protect against that attack, because this is just a single email sent to an individual to the often private email address or company email address. There is nothing that can protect against technology that can protect against that attack. Now that employee clicks on that email, of course, there is a technology that can detect that anomaly, but when it's successful, then there is malware or malicious code download that is executed on the network side, and then it depends on the what attackers want to do, but they are in the company. So no one today is attacking your firewall or your technology. Over 90%, and that's the data from our company, is threat actors attacking people.
And I must totally agree, and sort of like seeing the sophistication of the attacks and all the data, like you say, that is available, and you can even time the email sending so that it triggers your actions. So it's basically impossible to distinguish. Then I would sort of like challenge that. Are we sort of like relying too much on the, let's say, legacy 15 years old architectures and tools in our business processes? And now we sort of segue to the cloud thing. So if we do the cloud transformation for the applications and move those there, this would be, in my opinion, also like a great opportunity for revolutionize the tooling and what we use in the businesses, and maybe get rid of some of these components.
And Derek, sorry, one thing to add, sorry, you asked me how to protect. So what we do is actually we run simulated attacks against our employees. So basically, we don't announce that. We send a malicious email to every single employee, over 100,000 emails being sent to our people, and we then measure how many people can click on these links and how many people are prone to these attacks. Now, if you are unsuccessful and you click several times, then I'm not going to share that publicly, but we take some HR actions against these people, because this is the cyber risk is on our for our company is in top 3. So our CEO saying we have a number of risks, for the pharma industry, and the cyber risk against the cyber attack is in top 3. So we take that really seriously.
I mean, considering the kind of data GSK is storing, I'm happy to hear that. Derek, I'll give you a chance to speak. I'm just trying to be cautious of Paula being online. So Paula, what's your perspective of this cyber attacks or the hacking and the fact that it's mostly impacting the biggest failure is on users? But reality is we shouldn't look at it like this. We should look at it that the responsibility is on technology, not on users, to make sure that it is safe.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm not a big fan of, even though, of course, quite often it's a fact that saying that the human is the weakest part of the security chain. because when we put anything against that, then we've got technology, different solutions, we've got CM systems and so on. So human kind of doesn't fit there. Ideally, of course, what we should have is a technology that's just simply has our back, and to address the, I would say, nowadays challenge, what we need to do, or what defenders across the industry must come together for. It's simply a zero trust security approach that covers the entire technology ecosystem. So even though, for example, a user clicks on the link, ideally we should sleep well and do not see that one as a big problem, because the technology simply is not allowing the threat to come in, and eventually the risk through the technology is minimized. And because today the digital transformation that we are talking about cannot really happen without security transformation, and the zero trust strategy will be top of mind for many organizations because of its principles. Verify explicitly, grant least privilege access, assume the bridge, and help maintain security amidst the IT complexity that comes with the hybrid work. So eventually, whenever we are thinking about direction that the companies should look at, one thing, of course, should be the zero trust mindset, but another one, it's the review of what kind of identities we use within the company. So, for example, if we got a user that clicks on a link, opens the attachment, and so on, what kind of identity from the risk perspective that user presents within the company. So if I'm just a user, okay, that's great. I don't have privileges on the operating system, but I've got access to data. I can cause that data to be encrypted. I can cause that data to be leaking. So that's why identity is more important than ever, because user at the user's disposal has its tools, and eventually these tools are the one of the biggest threat right now. So not being an admin is already passé, and most of the companies moved into this direction. Now it's about zero trust, not running the code, thinking about the identity, who has access to the data, and of course the future thinking also takes into consideration the taking the advantage of like more robust security implementation in the cloud, and having the intelligent monitoring of what executes and how it executes on our system, so that we are able to connect the dots and eventually block it. And the last thing to add, it's investment in people and skills. I run the cybersecurity company, and the problem with talent, it's for the past 15 years, I'm actually running it, and we are always struggling with hire someone good in cybersecurity. That's why we decided this year that we are going to grow the talent inside the company, from IT guys, let's say, to someone who's actually dealing with big security problems. And I think that that direction is also something that we should look at.
The whole notion of talent, I think we're not going to touch upon it, because otherwise we'll talk for the next couple hours, and I think shortage of talent is apparent everywhere, and especially, I'm pretty sure, in cybersecurity. Dariusz, you wanted to add something?
Just building on what my colleague said, just wanted to illustrate something, the evolution which companies go through, and you are calling this security transformation, and I think that's quite smart thing, or smart word, how to name it. If you look into my company, which is actually building the most critical for society's public solutions in the world, with the most sensitive data which we need to protect.
What do you do?
We as a company?
Yeah. If it's most critical.
Yeah, we are digitalizing public sector, mainly in some countries. So we are building solutions for practically all the ministries and agencies, public agencies, to move digitalization to the next level in the public sector. But if you look into my LinkedIn profile, even a couple of years ago, then I was part of the organization called Technology and Security Solutions, meaning that we were offering to our customers technology and security. Now we changed to technology, services, and products, and we removed security from the name, also to indicate that now security is everywhere, because cybersecurity wouldn't be the case if we had the entire product, software, you name it, life cycle being done perfectly, starting with requirements, going through analysis, design, development, implementation, operation, and finally sunset of the solution. And now you can just estimate how many things can be forgotten on the way which may compromise security. So we actually need to incorporate this security skills and mindset in every single role which we have in this value chain. And that's actually the change which is happening. So security is not standalone. Security is now needs to be everywhere. And that's also, I think, if we discuss it later, one of the points how we should address this talent gap which we have, because being in this conference, we cannot skip this topic.
I'm going to deliberately, maybe we'll find time, but for sure this. So would it be a fair assessment now to say that historically other businesses used to be the biggest threats to other businesses, right? So either I sell the shoes or a competitor company sells the shoes. And now cybersecurity is advancing on that scale of risk, like you mentioned, Grzegorz, that it's third on this. So is hacking attacks, or is hacking and losing data, is that becoming more of a threat to companies than other businesses, other companies?
Yes.
Okay, next question.
Okay, I'm conscious we are close to the coffee break, but let me put it in brief. So I'm going to challenge that you said that the competition between companies is a threat. No, it is not a threat, it's an opportunity. You know, without that competition, we were never ever evolve and transform our organizations to take that next step. We would stay, you know, where we were in 1980s, whatever. Okay, so this is my one comment. The second comment is security threats. This is not new. We've been building Security Operations Center 10 years ago. We have seen different attacks. These attacks are evolving every single day. It's not something that we can build sustainable protection, you know, for another year, because everything that we are planning today is invalid tomorrow. And if you look, we try to estimate and build our plans based on the history, you know, what we learned through last couple years, months, and so on. And that we take the data, we try to predict what's going to happen tomorrow, and ransomware right now is a huge threat to companies as well as individuals. It's probably number one right now, and it's the most beneficial for threat attackers. But if you look at your badge, okay, there is a statement that says beyond tomorrow. So it is not what we think is going to happen tomorrow, because we probably know what's going to happen tomorrow, but what's a day after tomorrow? And my insomnia is, you know, what if all the encrypting and cryptographic algorithms going to be simply fail? And there will be a network and superpower computers that are going to decrypt passwords and encryption mechanisms, you know, in seconds, not in days or months. Now, what's next? You know, what's then? It means that whatever we plan today and whatever we try to execute tomorrow, you can simply, you know, just put it to the bin.
So, if I may comment, so I guess that's a very valid point, and that was a hot topic like a couple of years ago, the quantum computing and that breaking the encryption algorithms. And now, if we sort of trust the estimates that in, let's say, in the coming 10 years, there will be a quantum computer that can break the current algorithms, and if we have some data that needs to be kept secret for more than 10 years, we already are sort of lost, because we can start, or the adversaries can start recording the data, and once the quantum computer is there, they can reveal the secrets. So in that sense, I think we need to hurry. The positive side is that the organizations are doing the standardization, and there's like probably in a couple of years there would be new algorithms that would be resistant. But then we face the next challenge, that how realistic it is that we can actually enroll the new algorithms in our infrastructure and change the policies and change the keys, and that will be like a huge effort.
Yeah, well, that view that you presented on, you know, on super fast computers and that threat, that's just scary. That just shows that whatever we're talking about, I think how we started, whatever we're talking about in terms of the future, if we're not diligent enough or not fast enough in cybersecurity, then it's not going to happen. I can't imagine what happens if that kind of breaches are there. So should we say, Grzegorz, should we say that cybersecurity or hacking is an opportunity? If we're saying that, you know, businesses fighting with businesses, competing with businesses is an opportunity, so should we look at it as a threat or as an opportunity?
So these are threats, okay?
Okay,
so
good.
Let me make it clear. These are really serious threats, okay? But without these threats, which we don't want, by the way, we will never, ever try to protect the data, not against these threat actors, the people that want to use the data, earn money, but also we are moving that, we're putting the baseline a bit up, trying to make sure that people not using admin passwords, people are not making, you know, really stupid misconfigurations. They are not opening firewalls and allow people access the data from, you know, anywhere outside. So it is a positive, it sounds as bad as it sounds, there is a positive aspect of these threats against companies, because companies are going to think about cybersecurity more seriously with these emerging threats.
But I think it's both, because if you look into security from reactive and proactive perspective, then typically we think that, okay, we are reacting on something and we need to learn out of this. But then we are also doing a lot of proactive things, and these proactive things are quite innovative, simply thinking how to be one step ahead. And that's also moving the other non-cybersecurity topics a bit forward. So we have much stronger algorithms, we have much simply better solutions, because we think about security a bit proactively. So it can be, to some extent, also opportunity.
I think the companies that will protect our data better will be better in the future, right? So when we talk about kind of sustainability and how doing good can cut into doing well, I think investment in cybersecurity is key. And you wanted to comment?
Yeah, I totally agree, and I guess in the business context, there's sort of like regulations that actually force the companies to do that. I'm more worried about like the individuals sharing their information for the platforms, and normally there people don't actually understand the effect and don't care that much, but that's maybe a different topic.
So to carry on that, and I think kind of listening to the conversations that we've had in the conference, I think we're missing, at least in the panels or in the discussions that I've seen, we're kind of missing a very big stakeholder, which is the government and the legislation. So what's the role of legislation, either industry legislation like banking? I'm pretty sure there's pretty strict rules when it comes to banking. And what's the role of the government in trying to protect us? Should we go the Chinese way, where data is owned by the government, or should we go the kind of Western European way, where we still own the data, but there's some regulation that protects us?
If I continue from the sort of banking side, definitely we are sort of one of the regulated industries, and there's a reason for that, because there are bad things happened in the past, and then the regulators set some rules and some controls we need to implement, which is actually good, and that sort of enforces us to do these things. I'm just hoping that the other enterprises and the other sort of businesses would see the value of the data and value of the privacy without being like totally regulated, because that brings quite a lot of overhead for the business we need to do. But then coming to the personal data, I'm a big fan of GDPR, even though the pop-ups are very complicated and annoying. But still, I think
do they actually,
is great.
My thinking is, do they actually make sense? I mean, who reads them, these pop-ups? Who accept? I mean, you guys read. I mean, by default you have to read them, I presume. But still, people just click OK, right? Whatever there is, or accept all cookies, because that's just going to be faster. Darek, any thought on government?
Just think about government. Three things. So the first one is that we just need to remember that government and the governmental institutions, they manage the biggest volume of data and the most critical data. They know everything about us when it comes to healthcare, our personal information, history, everything, right? So there is no other company in any country which has or manages more than the government. And there is also something called critical national infrastructure. So it is not only railways or roads or energy kind of networks, it is also IT infrastructure, which is in the hands of the government, and it is also data, which is there. And it must be regulated by them, and it must be protected by them. So that's the first role of the government. The second thing, it is something what we call restricted industries, like financial institutions, those which somehow are built on the trust of the users. And those need to be also strictly regulated, like banks, clinical research organizations, this kind of stuff, right? So that's private companies, but to be strictly regulated. And then there's a big question, which is quite difficult to answer, how the other companies, which also, as I mentioned earlier, process the data, manage our data, how they should, to which extent they should be regulated, to not kill innovation, to not simply over-regulate those markets. And I think that the third part is, from a regulatory perspective, the most difficult to define.
Anything outside of GDPR that you can think of, kind of what the government should do, or do we think that GDPR is a... Paula is nodding, maybe you have a...
Yeah, absolutely. There are so many other aspects that government should also cover. I'm really glad that governments finally start to notice that cybersecurity is an important thing to invest to. For example, European Commission even is making quite a huge investment into the growth of cybersecurity within the government organizations. Just to give here an example, last year, we've been doing the project for the government of one of the countries in Europe, one of the units for the government, where the personal data of citizens simply leaked. So that is a big deal, especially in the context of GDPR and so on. And it appeared, because we were doing the investigation, the whole forensic and so on, that hackers were sitting in that infrastructure for over 9 months, which is quite a standard, I would say. On average, it's like 200 days, according, for example, to FBI reports and so on, and that's what we are able to see. And I will tell you one thing, that particular part of the government was completely not prepared for that incident. And one of the things that we are observing is the, in general, trend to invest into incident readiness approach. So various governments, when they observe what's happening, they decide to do that. And that is also something that we could apply within the private companies. Not a really long time ago, we were preparing ourselves for the project where we are actually preparing government of a certain country to be ready for any type of incident, any hacking incident that's going to happen. And question is, are we ready for that? Because one thing is incident response that we generate when the incident happens. And of course, it's a little bit of a chaos, it's a little bit of preparation. So we know that there's a lot of emotions, time plays a significant role over here. But what kind of steps we are able to take to be like, not really 100% ready, but ready enough to take any type of incident. And it does not always involve technology, but things like PR and so on. Of course, not getting into details, but that is also one of the aspects that we should take into consideration.
Thank you. There's a key role in I think in what government does. I've heard also examples of, and I think it should be maybe further, even if we look at GDPR and all these nodes that you have to click. I'm not sure why I have to approve or disapprove. It should be, I think, somewhere more regulated what can be done or cannot be done with my data. So slightly coming back to the fact that it's technology that is to protect us, we can't blame the people. So I think we can't blame the user for clicking somewhere. It should be rather regulated what can and cannot be done, and should be more on the companies. So thank you very much. I think we're going to be slightly finishing up the panel. Personally, I keep fingers crossed for all of you, because you're there and your companies are there to protect the vital information that we have. I'd like to finish off with something maybe on a lighter note, or something that some of us can use or so personally. How do you personally protect your information? Email, mobile, things like that. What if I had to change something, if you were thinking like most common people have the common one is that people have a short password or the same password, right? So outside of company, real life, yourselves, what do you think we should, what makes you mostly secured? And we'll go one by one, Darek.
You are asking a question which will put us at risk of...
Okay, then thank you.
I'm not sure.
So you ruined my question. I'm pretty sure you can share information like...
I think it's awareness, and I think it's always important to remember that security is not a goal itself. It's a supportive function to all the other stuff, right? Remember about security, be aware of what you are sharing, with whom you are sharing, but keep it in your mind all the time, but never just do something for security. Do it for different reasons with security in your mind.
Thank you.
My approach also to my mobile phone.
Good, thank you. Grzegorz?
I have to say, I don't think we have enough time to answer that question.
Well, you choose one or two.
Use password manager. Don't use the same password everywhere, because when it's leaked from one place, it allows other people access pretty much your online identity anywhere and enable 2FA, two-factor authentication. So use your device. That would be the simplest answer I can give you now.
That's it.
I have maybe two
Markku?
points, and one is sort of like following your lines, thinking like what I'm sharing, what information, and is it something like a fatal happening if that information leaks, and I'm keeping that in mind when interacting with the online services. The second thing is that whenever it's possible, I'm enabling the second factor authentication on the services.
Great, thank you. And Paula?
Yeah, absolutely. So in this case, just a common sense, and I completely agree with the statement having security in mind. I would add heart to it. Sometimes we don't think about it, but that should be just like built into our overall process. So as we were discussing, security is in line with technology. Also, password manager, from my perspective, I use it all the time, not to share passwords across different portals, LinkedIn being such a popular portal. They were hacked in years ago. So eventually that the same strategy applies to any other technology, and also not running the code that we don't know. So whenever, for example, we download the application from somewhere, now digital signature, it's not a rocket science. Everything should be digitally signed, even though we know that in process regarding the vendor hacking that could be affected. But that is the common sense that we use every day.
Statement from me: don't mix up your private tools with your corporate tools, especially in this time when we have so many people working from everywhere all the time, all around the clock. We tend to use the same tool for work and for our private life, and that's pretty dangerous. So you need to separate it.
Thank you very much. We haven't touched on talent. We haven't touched on COVID. I'm not touching on COVID. I'm proud of, I think enough of COVID. So thank you very much. Very interesting. I hope the audience found it interesting as well. Thank you.
Resilience, maturity, talents, growth, innovation. The change made us stronger. This all made us sustainable. ABSL Summit. Beyond tomorrow. Building a sustainable future.